Ever imagine yourself like leading a team under pressure? Having to make those split-second decisions that like really matter.
Yeah, where the stakes are high.
Exactly. Well, today we are diving deep into the world of a military lieutenant. And let me tell you, these rule catcher files you've given
Oh,
us,
yeah.
they are packed.
It's more than just a rank, that's for sure. RoleCatcher really gets into it, the responsibility a lieutenant carries. It's a lot, from training new recruits
Right.
to navigating those high-stakes situations.
Okay, so for anyone listening who maybe isn't like fluent in military lingo, role catcher defines a lieutenant as, and I quote, a dedicated military leader who oversees and guides platoons of soldiers.
Right.
Now, when we say platoon, we're talking what? Typically around 30 to 50 soldiers?
Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark.
So you're not just like managing schedules, you're shaping the lives of dozens of individuals.
And not just shaping, but preparing them, right? We're talking intense situations. I mean, we hear those phrases like overseas and guides, but RoleCatcher gets real about it. This is boots on the ground, but also strategic thinking.
Oh, interesting.
Mentoring soldiers one-on-one, overseeing their training, but then making sure that all connects to the bigger picture, the strategy.
It's funny, you picture lieutenants and you think, okay, they're always out in the field leading exercises, probably under a scorching sun.
Yeah, that's the image.
But going through these role catcher files, they mention the work environment can actually be surprisingly diverse.
Oh, absolutely.
One day you're out on a training mission, and the next you're in an office, strategizing, coordinating with higher-ups. They even have administrative tasks.
That's the thing. It's so dynamic. That's what makes it fascinating, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You're not just confined to one setting, one type of task.
Right.
A lieutenant needs to be adaptable
Oh, for sure.
because they go from like a physically demanding training exercise right into needing that mental focus for strategic planning.
And RoleCatcher doesn't sugarcoat it either. They're upfront about those long, irregular work hours. It comes with the territory.
It's part of the deal.
Plus, the very real possibility of deployment. And not just deployment, but to high-stress environment.
Right. It's not for everyone. You have
Mhm.
to have a certain resilience, both mental and physical.
Absolutely.
And I think RoleCatcher highlighting the irregular hours
Mhm.
is important. It's not even just about working long days. It's that constant change,
That's a good point.
shifting schedules, unexpected challenges,
Yeah.
being able to roll with it.
Which makes sense when you think about the decisions they have to make, right? It's not like, oh, did I meet this deadline? We're talking life or death, potentially.
Exactly.
So how does someone even start in a career like this?
Well, RoleCatcher does a good job breaking down the career progression. They outline 4 main stages, which is helpful. They've
Okay.
got your entry-level, junior, mid-level, and then senior lieutenant. As you can imagine, the responsibility and the pressure that ramps up with each stage.
So let's break that down a bit. Like starting out entry-level lieutenant, what are they actually doing day to day?
So think of it as like you're building your skills, proving yourself.
Mm.
You're typically commanding a smaller platoon, probably during training exercises mostly.
Okay.
You're assisting in planning those exercises.
Hmm.
And as you gain experience, you start taking on more responsibility for the daily operations.
So it's hands-on, but with like a bit of a safety net.
Yeah, you could say that. There's still mentorship, guidance. You have the opportunity to make mistakes and learn in a hopefully controlled environment.
Right.
It's about those fundamentals, building trust with your soldiers and proving you can handle leading a group, even when things get tough.
So you're getting that experience, like cutting your teeth as an entry-level lieutenant, proving you can handle it. What happens next? Junior lieutenant, did the training wheels come off at that point?
You could say that, yeah. You're definitely transitioning from assisting to leading,
Yeah.
and a mentorship's still important, but RoleCatcher highlights that shift.
Oh,
You go from assisting in development to implementing training programs, actually putting them into action.
yeah.
And you're working more directly with those higher-ranking officers, planning larger exercises.
I see. So your decisions are having a bigger impact.
Absolutely. Much
Yeah.
more directly impacting how your platoon performs.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's less about learning the ropes at this point, more like showing you can use those ropes to.
Tie some like seriously intricate knots.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. It's about taking ownership. Like, imagine you're running a training exercise and suddenly, boom, weather throws everything off. Or equipment malfunctions.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
A junior lieutenant has to be able to think fast, make the call to adjust, but make sure the training is still safe, still effective.
That's some serious on your feet thinking. So I'm guessing those decisions, they only get more critical as you move up? mid-level lieutenant.
Oh, absolutely. Because now, think about it, the scope is way bigger. You're not just responsible for one platoon anymore.
Right.
RoleCatcher, they point out that at this level, you're often commanding and leading multiple platoons. So we're talking potentially over 100 soldiers, more complex exercises.
So instead of just like one unit, you got multiple platoons, but they have to act as one.
Exactly. You've got it.
Wow, the strategy involved in that. What does RoleCatcher say about the planning that goes into that kind of thing?
It's not just knowing the drills, it's about anticipating what could go wrong. Because a mid-level lieutenant might be tasked with planning, say, a combat scenario, but it involves all these platoons,
Okay.
each with their own objectives, their own limitations, and you've got to factor in the terrain, what are the enemy tactics, what resources do we have, any potential risks.
Oh, man.
And throughout all of that, you're still responsible for the mission's success and everyone's safety.
So it's like, I don't even know, it's like a giant chess game, but with real-life consequences.
That's a great comparison.
Hmm.
High stakes. And then you reach the top. Senior lieutenant.
Okay, so you've climbed the ranks.
All those years of experience, all those instincts, they come together.
Yeah.
And RoleCatcher, they emphasize this shift. You go from reacting to situations to actually shaping the future of the unit, which is pretty amazing when you think about it.
So less putting out fires, more like preventing them in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Proactive. So remember those training programs you were implementing as a junior lieutenant?
Right. Yeah.
Now you're developing them. Strategic training programs. Working directly with high-ranking officers to actually plan and execute military operations.
So you're not just thinking about today's threats, you're anticipating what's next, globally even. That's a heavy responsibility to be shaping those training programs.
It is, because you need to understand what's happening geopolitically. What are the new technologies? What are the threats?
Right.
But at the same time, you're nurturing that next generation of military leaders.
Oh, wow.
But imagine guiding your unit through a complex operation. And they succeed because of the training you helped develop.
That's got to be incredibly rewarding to know you had that kind of impact.
Absolutely.
Okay, so say someone's listening to us and they are fired up. They're thinking, sign me up. How do I become a lieutenant?
Well, even before they think about, strapping on those combat boots, RoleCatcher has some really interesting things to say about the education.
Yeah, and I was actually surprised by this
Okay.
because you think military science, that's it, right?
Right, makes sense.
But RoleCatcher lists psychology, international relations, even criminal justice.
Exactly. It's a pretty broad range.
So, okay, I get leadership, but how does that stuff translate to the military? It's not like they're, psychoanalyzing the enemy in the middle of a firefight.
Right. No, it's more nuanced than that. You have to think about the core skills of a lieutenant. Leadership, yes, but also critical thinking.
Right.
The ability to understand, manage people from all different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And then being able to make those sound judgments under pressure. And often in situations that are ethically complex.
That's a really good point.
These are all skills you hone in those fields.
Yeah.
Psychology, international relations, even criminal justice. It all ties in.
It's true. It's like you're not just leading soldiers. You're navigating all these complex human dynamics, cultural differences, maybe even conflict within your platoon. So, yeah, I can see how a background in those fields would be really valuable.
It's huge. And don't forget about those extra certifications RoleCatcher mentions, like Ranger School, Airborne School,
Right.
the Special Forces Qualification Course. Those aren't just for show.
Right. It's not just a line on your resume.
Exactly. They show a certain level of commitment, right?
Yeah.
That specialized training, the ability to push yourself. And those are qualities no matter who the employer is.
Yeah.
Military, civilian, they notice that.
It's like those extra credit projects. It's like, okay, they didn't have to do that.
Right. Shows initiative.
But they did. All right. But let's be real. Even with a perfect resume, you still got to nail that interview. And RoleCatcher, thankfully, seems to have that covered too. That database of practice questions, over 120,000.
It's massive.
It's like they've compiled every single interview question ever asked in the history of interviews.
And it's not just the number. It's what they do with it, the technology, how they personalize it. That Copilot AI thing is really something.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that.
Imagine getting feedback on your answers, like in real time, identifying areas where you could improve, even tailoring what you say to the specific role.
It's like having a little interview coach in your pocket. But okay, beyond just like the standard interview questions, nailing those, What does RoleCatcher say about actually standing out?
Well, I think it comes down to showcasing the qualities of a great lieutenant. Leadership is kind of a given. You want to demonstrate that.
Yeah, right.
But also problem solving. Under pressure,
Yes.
strategic thinking, and maybe most importantly, how you communicate.
So it's not just enough to say, like, oh, yeah, I'm a natural leader. It's proving it.
Exactly. Give those examples. Like, I had this situation. It was chaotic. I had to make a tough decision. I had limited information, but here's how I thought about it, stayed calm, and led the team to safety. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Show, don't tell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Be ready to talk about those challenges you've overcome, difficult personalities you've had to work with, ethical dilemmas, all of that,
Yeah.
especially in a team setting.
Because, I mean, leading a platoon, high-stakes environment, that's got to be a little more intense than, like, your average team project in an office.
Just a little.
Yeah.
But it's about proving to those interviewers that you have the skills, for sure, but also the character,
Yeah.
the resilience,
Yeah.
the commitment. Because you're not just leading, you're inspiring, and ultimately, you're responsible for the lives of those soldiers.
And that brings us back to, like, the heart of what we've been talking about today, thanks to your RoleCatcher files. Being a lieutenant, it's way more than, like, barking orders or looking good in uniform.
Right, it's a lot deeper than that.
It really is. It takes dedication. You have to be both mentally and physically strong.
Resilient.
And you have such a huge responsibility, not just for these soldiers, but for their lives.
It's a career path that it demands a lot, but it's also an incredible opportunity for growth, personally and professionally.
Oh, absolutely. Makes you appreciate the people who choose to do this.
Absolutely, for sure.
Well, I think it's safe to say we have officially, we've navigated another deep dive.
He made it.
We have explored the world of a lieutenant.
Multifaceted world.
It really is. But before we go, you know I like to leave our listeners with something to think about. So, as you're all out there, considering your own paths, whether that's the military, leadership roles, or just, navigating life.
Life in general.
What parts of this role really stuck with you? What skills do you have right now that you think would make you successful in a role like this?
Demanding, sure, but also so rewarding.
It's about finding that connection.
Exactly. Something to ponder as you continue your own journeys.
Love that. Until next time, keep driving deep.